Let's see how we could sculpt a very basic TV remote control out of a cube. So I have my cube selected. I press Tab to go into edit mode. I'm inside my side view, and then I press S and Y and scale, for example, my cube roughly to the length. And in top view, maybe I widen it a little bit. So scale along S and X. Okay. So this is roughly the body of my remote control. Now I have to add more further geometry. So I can go to Loop Cut, click it, or press Ctrl R, and then move my mouse wheel once. So I scroll it, and 2 loop cuts should be good. And I just simply click and let them where they are. And then while in shaded mode, I make sure that limit selection is turned off, so it should not be dark. And then I can go ahead, press B, left mouse button, and drag a selection through my model. And for example, move those points up. With A, I remove my selection or clear it. Okay, so like this. I know, for example, that the remote control is slightly arced, so I press Ctrl R, add 1 loop cut, but I don't really want to move it left and right, so after I left clicked, I press Escape, and then, for example, at each end, I can maybe move those points a little bit away from each other. So you see that they arc a little bit. And it's very boxy right now at the beginning, but that's no problem. For example, this part, I move a little bit to this. So here would be my palm, here would maybe my thumb, my pinky, my other fingers. Here would be the power control. Here would be the infrared sensor for the remote control. And at this point, actually, maybe we can start adding the subdivision surface modifier to turn this into a softer object. Then I select everything and click on shading smooth, so it looks nice and soft. So let's take a look at what we have here. Well, it's too blob-like, and I have to sharpen my edges now. So now to sharpen the edges, I have to add a little bit more loop cuts. So for example, I could maybe add 1 loop cut here, Ctrl R, and maybe to there. So you can see in the lower left corner, edge slide is roughly 0.6. So I type in 0.6 and I memorize that value, because now I could go to the other side, click, and here it might be minus 0.6. Okay. And I can do the same from the side as well. So maybe something like this. But you see that those loop cuts currently are not all on the same level, which would mean that the fillet radius might be different. So I press S and Z and Y and scale them along the Z-axis to 0. So they're all the same. So that's okay. And then maybe I can move them up a little bit. And then I try to eyeball, for example, that this distance is equal this distance. And let me show you that there's actually a way how to measure this. So if I, for example, click 2 points or an edge, press N, and then I go to Mesh Display and turn on edge length, for example in metrics, it tells me that this is now 24.76 centimeters long. well, I started with the standard cube, which is 2 meters long. So currently this is a pretty big remote control. So of course I should have started somewhat with a smaller cube. But I can now, for example, Alt left click on this loop cut and then press G, Z and move it down. And this again was 24. So 24, you see now that this edge is 24, roughly 24. So they're somewhat similar. Okay. Then, for example, what else can I do to make this look a little bit more interesting? Yes, I can, for example, add a loop cut down here. And let's say you had it positioned and then you would like to slide actually this edge. I mean, if you press G and Z, you just move it up and down. But you can actually slide an edge. So you have under deform edge slide, and if you click it, you see that each point on each edge moves basically from minus 100% to 0, which is the center of an edge, to positive 100. So it's kind of like a percentage move. So maybe I would like it to be roughly somewhere there. Okay, so let's take a look. Maybe in top view, I'm going to maybe arc this one out a little bit more. And here maybe those points I move down a little bit. And I also need one loop cut maybe at the end, and you see this way I sharpen. Let me turn those off. That might be a little bit distracting right now. This way I turn off, I sharpen the front corner. Maybe let me go in top view. Let's do this again. There you see how I can interactively decide how the blend between the different sides should be. Now this, for example, looks already much better. So let's try to make this one a little bit more organic and ergonomic. So for example, those points, I move in a little bit, and then those points, I move down a little bit. And you see that this way, actually, I start creating a nice curve here. Maybe I push this one back to there. Okay. That looks somewhat good. Maybe those points here, I scale in a little bit. And then I do the same with those points. And you see that this way I created kind of like a transition that the back part is getting a little bit smaller. And then seen from the bottom part, this, for example, is a very sharp edge. Or it's not very sharp, but I would like it to be softer. So I can do this by, for example, selecting those points and then maybe moving them down. And you don't see a lot yet, but if I select those points, and in this case I have to scale along the x-axis, scale them in a lot, maybe like this. There you can see, based on the highlight, that here, for example, we have sharper edges, and then there everything gets a little bit rounder. And to maybe increase that look and feel, we can select those midpoints and move it slightly up, so that maybe from here you can see that it has some curvature to it. So that, for example, would feel nice when the fingers are actually going to touch it. But those points are a little bit too close to each other, so I scale them apart a little bit more, maybe like this. Because if I do it too much, I can also start actually, here you can see it, I can start creasing that surface, which is not really what I want. So like with NURBS surfaces or curves, it's very important that you pay attention to the spacing of CV points across your mesh. And maybe those I scale in a little bit as well to increase that roundness effect. Okay, I think at this point we can leave it where it is. So you see how you could create out of a cube by placing strategically well-working loop cuts, something like a remote control.